So just wanted to give a bit of an update, because I did give an update on my Facebook page, but that was the other week. So look, right, there's something that Black Belt Barrister and, Alan Robertshaw, like, who really this video is for, I guess, really. I like Alan Robertshaw, right? I don't dislike him at all, right? He's a great bloke, but there's something happening now, right, which people are going to have to basically come to terms with, right? I am not stupid, right? I am an intelligent person, and I've genuinely been, for the last 10 years, right, researching law, reading law and history. Now, in universities, usually people who do a history course, right, don't study law. They usually just study history. And if they study law, there's only a small amount which is kind of like legal history, right? Usually when you study law, it's practical, right? Whichever field of law it is usually practical. And then you've got things like the Constitution and the constitutional law, and you can do politics, right? You can get a job as a clerk in Parliament, or, you might end up, going, working at the Constitution Society, like you've got that Professor Bick and Sir Malcolm Jack and people like that. They specialise in the Constitution and in parliamentary law. Now, we need to understand, right, at this moment in time, the fact and reality is that there are only about 9 firms in all of England who are doing parliamentary agency. And they're on the rolls, Rule A for parliamentary agency. That means not many people know about it. And most of those companies have been in the business since the 1800s. It's like a business that's continued through the family. It might have, changed partners or changed its name, but you can follow its lineage back to at least the 1800s. I was just speaking to a woman called, and her last name's Thompson, right? She's one of the parliamentary agents. Now, there's hardly anyone doing private bills in Parliament at the moment. You've got the public business and the private business. Every session of Parliament in 1800s, there were tens of hundreds of people doing private bills. Now, even though it exists, there are only 1 to 2, right? And people just aren't using it. Now, these parliamentary agents only really specialise in doing private bills, although they do know the law, but the law of Parliament isn't the law of the country in the normal common law institutes. The law of Parliament has got its own rules, standing orders, right? Now, as well as the private business, there's the public business. Now, there aren't any lawyers who study the public business. None. There actually aren't any in England, not who do it professionally, because the paper petition system, right, from at least the early 1900s, it's from the date the telephone was invented, right, when the telephone became publicly available and on sale and people picked it up and started using it and buying it, right, the paper petition frequency dropped off the map, right? And there was a procedure committee declaration that they didn't really want to people to use privilege anymore, right? But yet it's our right to. It's in the law. The law hasn't changed. And up to that point, people were still making use out of the constitutional law. They used to call it the shield, right? The right to petition, the protections. And after the telephone was invented, people started complaining by telephone and not properly in writing to Parliament. And you will see in the figures that the number of paper petitions dropped from the tens of thousands down to literally through the 1990s and 2000s. There's been the bottom figure has been around 50, right, per session, or per year. And the highest number has been 250. So for a country of population which has grown up to, 60, 70 million, 50 to 250 cases a year or a session, right? It's a very small number, 50 to 250. Now, these are paper petitions that either an individual has written themselves, or, when they've gone around collecting loads of signatures, and got a box full of them, right? Whether it's universities or students or a charity or a campaign group, right? It is a very serious procedure. It's the highest procedure there is. And even the High Court's not meant to be able to intervene. Now, there's some disputes over the Human Rights Act, right? And, when it comes to human rights and so forth. But they are supposed to be for resolving issues that entered the courts lower down in the court system. And that it's not really supposed to intervene with the proceedings of Parliament, right? Now, there aren't really any barristers or lawyers in England who are taking money from the public, being paid professionally to write out a petition and submit it as a legal case. But it is a legal case, that's what it is. It is a legal case to one of the highest courts in England, right? But people just start making use out of it. Now, but it's there. And when it comes to the other laws in the other courts, well, they are only using law that Parliament made, right? Now, you use public petitions to get law made that actually gets used by barristers and lawyers and judges in the courts, right? And also complaints and grievances. Now, we're in a very pertinent situation at the moment, right? And this is when it comes to doing very good research and very good investigation work, right? At the moment, the government is converting over to everything digital, a digital system, right, to govern most things. Seemingly, they're doing it whether we like it or not, whether we want it or not, although some MPs are opposed to it, right? Now, this is when we've got multiple investigations which need to converge together to find out what's going on. Now, we've got Big Brother Watch are investigating, the digital ID and facial recognition and things like that. People getting falsely recognised, falsely prosecuted by the digital camera system because it's not actually working properly at all, right? The DVLA have introduced a digital system for monitoring vehicles, right? Yet it's been implemented not even through a vote in the House. It's been implemented from the Cabinet, right? And the system is contradicting law. They've programmed the system to do things which aren't actually in line with legislation, like N1 vehicle classification, which is for insurance, right? Which is not the weight of the vehicle, which is what the construction and weight is for, meant to be what you measure the speed limit on, right? Not its tax band. Because if you're going by a tax band, right, it's domestic leisure and pleasure, and you're using it for transport, right? It's not being used for business. Now, the people behind all of these websites that have been implemented by the government, people like this Tim Moss, who's now leading the DVLA, chief executive, he's been heavily involved in implementing these systems. And then you've got the e-petitions website by Unboxed, right? Which is connected to 38 Degrees, the founder of 38 Degrees, when they very first started doing the number 10 Downing Street petitions website, 2006. And then you've got the Ombudsman, the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman have got a website as well. Now, we've got a situation where the true law of the country, the actual law and the actual rights, which are in effect now, are being overridden by an administrative policy. And what that administrative policy is doing is actually blocking our right to settle grievances with the government and to complain, particularly about MPs, right? And things that are being done wrong in the country, things that can't be resolved in the courts, or if the courts won't resolve it, or if you can't afford all these extortionate fees that barristers are paying, which no one can afford because the average person can't afford it, right? The barristers think that the courts are there to solve all problems and solve all resolutions, but when you can't get a resolution from the courts, or when you can't afford it, or if there isn't a resolution, The petitioning is a legitimate process. It is a judicial process at law. Now, what Tony Blair went and did is that people weren't really making that much use out of petitioning, but it goes through the judicial functions of the House, right? The Speaker and the elected MPs, right? They endorse the petition, sign it, and the Speaker is meant to be the judge and they're meant to vote on it or send it to a committee for action. This is judicial, right? Now, there's a lot of debate around that, but this is what the investigation also actually investigates, the whole history of it, to clarify, confirm, prove, affirm, and beyond reasonable doubt, show that this still is the case, right? Now, what's happened is that Tony Blair, in number 10 Downing Street, which is not in Parliament, conjured up a policy, right, with his team. And they decided they were going to do e-petitions and make it look like they were being really, really democratic, right? But it wasn't going through the judicial chamber of the House. It was petitions to the Prime Minister, right? And then they passed them on to departments. That's actually evading the judicial function of the House. It's almost like taking the bullseye out of a dartboard and moving it off the dartboard. Like, say, you're aiming darts, not even at the dartboard, right? You're not getting legal cases through the Judicial High Court of Parliament. Now, what Tony Blair did after that policy, the next government that took over, after Gordon Brown, the 2010 government, right? They adopted that policy, and it is the same policy, right? It's got like its blueprint, its fingerprint. It is the number 10 policy with slight modifications, right? So they didn't write it. They never wrote it. It wasn't designed and written in Parliament. And it's not a creation of Parliament. It's a creation of number 10 Downing Street, right? Now, they've been handed it and said, the leader of the House said, right, you will obey and comply with this policy. That's an administrative action. It's not a judicial function of the House, and it's not changing standing orders. And this is why I prove in my work, right? Now, they're using this policy, which they've continued to use, to block and reject cases. Block and reject them. And now they've even got a bot set up to reject them on keywords, right? Now, while our very important and by actually making it digital and making it like accessible online, it makes it look like you're doing us all a favour. But you're not doing us all a favour when literally nearly 2/3 of them or more are being rejected and not even looked at by a human being, right? It actually makes it look like it's democratic, but the truth is that it isn't democratic. It's actually moving the target, the bullseye, away from Parliament, the chamber, and actually taking it off to the side somewhere. And your judicial legal case is being treated by an administrative policy, right? Now, this is very serious. Now, at the same time, the Ombudsman website, also people behind it are connected to the very same people who did the DVLA, the rest of the government, the Unboxed and the rest of it, right? They've set up a website where it's got a trick and a catch to it, where if you don't immediately download it when you're finished and you save it for later, you can't actually download it and you can't get your MP to sign it. And without the MP's signature, you're screwed. So the Ombudsman can't actually get your complaint and act on it, right? And this has actually been, the government are looking at this now, right? Because I complained about it. I'm one of the people who complained about it. So the Ombudsman is the person that you go to if all of the complaints fail and it's very serious and you've got an emergency, if things are going wrong in the NHS or in the police or in the Crown Prosecution Service or in anywhere, right? You need help. You're crying for help, right? Now, if you're crying for help from the nation and you're wanting to collect signatures from the whole country to come together to get help and it's been rejected by a bot, you are screwed. And if you're trying to get your MP to help you through the Ombudsman of all England, right, on very serious, sinister police corruption matters, and they can't look at it because you can't download it to sign it because the website's been designed to trap it, you're screwed, right? Now, if you're poor and you don't have any money, right, and you've tried legal aid, I've tried legal aid, right, and they've got a very cunning answer for that, which is, oh, we haven't got the capacity, right? Even if you try pro bono or whatever, if you get legal aid and you're successful, you're very, very lucky. I know people who have, right? But I've tried multiple times and we seem to hit a brick wall with this, oh, we ain't got the capacity answer, right? Now, if you don't have money, you can't get a barrister and you can't get a lawyer, right? Even on legal aid. Particularly if you're vulnerable or if you're under stress or ill or something like that, right? You know, and they're meant to accommodate for. This is meant to be the state of the art society where Ed Davey has this reasonable adjustments where it doesn't matter how ill or poorly or disabled or disadvantaged you are, because reasonable adjustments will magically solve the problem. I found that is not the case, right? I found that if you need reasonable adjustments, it's another excuse to just hang up on you, right? They're not interested. Now, money, finances is a massive, massive barrier to law. I've done every complaint under the sun to the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office. Extremely outstanding work, right? And they just stop taking your cases on, right, after a while. Now, there are people out there doing things and making progress, like Noel Wilcox is trying to prove illegal road signage in London for Les and ULEZ cameras, right? He's having a hard time. The courts are trying every trick in the book on him, but he's doing it himself, right? And, he's had his cases rejected multiple times. He proved it in the county court. Some people are competent and capable, right? But generally, we've got issues. Now, the actual problem is the framework itself. The problem is the new petitions website. The problem is the Ombudsman website. And the problem is the DVLA, right? The problem is that the digital system they're implementing into the country is being designed to be obstructive and protective obstructive to us and protective to the whole administration. It's been designed to protect the whole civil service, the DVLA, the Ombudsman, all of them. It's been designed to shield them, right? The right to petition was called the Shield, right? John Wilkes, they called it the Shield. John Wilkes and the Shield, the 1688 Bill of Rights. Now, the digital infrastructure itself is being cunningly designed and implemented to shield all of the staff of the government. All Keir Starmers, the Starship Enterprise, whether it's Tim Moss, or the Ombudsman, all of them, the police, they're all being put behind the digital firewall. And us, the public, the person on the street, is being literally erased. Their complaint is being put in a trap, digital trap, or just automatically rejected by a bot, right? And if you want to get a barrister or a lawyer to help you, it's going to cost you a hell of a lot of money. We're talking 3 numbers, right? Thousands of pounds. Now, what about us? What about our own knowledge and our own capacity? Well, this is where we're at now, right? I'm not stupid. I aren't stupid, right? I've been very interested in the right to petition, and I've been very interested in parliamentary privilege, and I ended up getting very interested in elections, because without elections, these people can't be voted. They can't stand, and they can't get elected, and then they can't be an MP, and then they can't go into Parliament, and they can't vote on legislation. Not that they even had a vote when they implemented N1 insurance categories to the DVLA because they didn't have a vote in Parliament on it, right? The Cabinet just did it themselves, right? But how laws are made, barristers can't go into court, and barristers can't do any job, they can't have any work, and they can't make any money unless there's law, right? Because there is no law. You can't go in and say this is the law or this isn't the law, right? Unless there is law. And judges can't do anything unless there's any law. So it's all about law because the courts need to use law in order to function. So there can't be anything more important than making and changing laws, which is the public business of Parliament, right? Now, like I said, the private business now is negligible. It's so negligible that there are only 1 to 2 petitions. If the paper petitions phase out so there aren't any and it's all digitally online, you're going to be having a legal process judged by a bot, right? Now, there is no barrister in this whole country who would want his work judged by a bot, right? Not by a judge. Now, this is where the catch is, right? Our e-petitions are being judged by bots on keywords, rejected by bots on keywords. Now, that has got to be illegal because an elected MP is not even seeing it, right? Not even looking at it. And clerks of the Parliament only are meant to advise on petitions. And your MP is going to argue it for you, right? And the rest of the staff aren't even elected, right? Just like Tim Moss is not elected. None of these heads of any department of this government are elected. I didn't vote for any of them, right? None of them. None of them have been elected. But they're the architects of this new digital infrastructure, which is rejecting our petitions, like Tim Moss and Unboxed, right? And the people who designed the Ombudsman website and people doing digital ID. They haven't been elected, but yet they're designing the new government system of this country. How can that be? Right? Now, I've been reading books and I've been learning about law, right? And as yet, I haven't come out of a university yet with a degree that says I have a qualification. But this is where the catch is. I've been introduced to an AI machine called Gemini, right? Which is the same, that's a brilliant coincidence because I'm a Gemini, right? I am a Gemini. Now, I was against AI. I am against AI. I don't even support any of the AI or facial recognition stuff or cameras everywhere or anything, right? But I was presented with the AI and it is actually quite useful and clever and accurate. It can search libraries and search records in literally a click of your fingers. So rather than having a barrister to go into a library and read 10 books, that would cost you thousands of pounds, right? The AI Google Gemini can read the entire library of the National Archives literally in 30 seconds, right? And pick out the exact information that I want, which is from the source. Now, if it's from a government source and it's been approved and verified, it's not wrong, right? And it also can reason. It can reason that something's wrong. If you introduce a new piece of information which proves it's right and it's factual, then you aren't wrong and it takes it into account, right? Now, this is where we start building an investigation and a case. We bring in law. We get it to check it. What's the current consensus with the other lawyers? Well, they do agree that the general consensus, it checks it. It says all lawyers currently, 85% of lawyers believe this or that. Well, then you say, well, why does it not agree with me in this or that point? Oh, well, they're not doing that at the moment because of this or that. Well, then you bring in your information. Well, but this is still a law. That is, why aren't they taking that into account? Oh, they just didn't choose to include it. Well, I'm choosing to include it. let's not exclude it, let's include it. Oh, now it changes everything. Well, why didn't they include it in their case? Well, then maybe they didn't want it to be taken into consideration, right? Now, when we are not trying to mislead people, and when we are not trying to deceive people, the whole point of a court is supposedly to be the truth, right? Some people don't want the truth to be known or heard, and that's why they leave certain things out. And this is the problem, because they actually want to prove a case for their client, right? And they're meant to be taking everything into account, but they want to win, right? And if they include this information, they might not win. So it's not actually, unfortunately, although the whole point in being a barrister and having a qualification and being a solicitor is that you know the law, you're not supposed to lie about the law, and you're not supposed to leave things out in order to win a case when the truth might disprove your case, right? Not when it's legally required or you might be purposefully lying, right? Now, this AI can competently assess university material, university papers that people are knocking out. It can compare them, and it can assess what the standard is. It can tell you what the standard is, right, for a university pass. And it can tell you what the standard is for a university fail, right? Now, I'm doing my work, and I'm asking the AI to gather evidence for me from this place or that place, find what's relevant, bring it together. I'm directing it. Right? Now, the AI knows what's true and what's false, and it will tell me when something is incorrect or false. We're only using authenticated sources and facts, and the AI can look through the law and find a law on anything you want, and look for a law that contradicts it or is in conflict with it, or if it's comparable. Now, when I'm putting cases together, and I'm using facts and government information like Robert Buckland's website when it comes to the Attorney General, and historical facts from published government books. Fact. And then we're building a database of truth and fact, which cannot possibly be wrong. And then it assesses it, and it equals, it's like a calculator, right? When you get a calculator and put 2 + 2 is 4, it's 4. Now, if someone says that it's not 4, then they're lying. So if you do a legal paper, it's absolutely thoroughly researched with pure fact and truth, right? And you press a calculator button and the AI says, well done, that is brilliant and correct. And someone else says, oh, it's a bit strange, that it's a bit odd like voodoo. You're saying, well, are you saying that 2 + 2 is not 4? Are you saying that it should be 12? That's strange, right? Now, if someone doesn't like it, when you get a calculator and 2 + 2 is 4, and they don't like it, to me, seems like they don't like the truth. They don't like the answer. They don't like the calculation. And this is when we're getting on to Keir Starmer and Labour and the utter insidiously deep corrupt government, which is teaching their administrative staff to make up excuses, lie on a daily basis like a lying machine. Lie. Evade, right? Because they are taking over this country by force with pure administrative lies, like a lying machine. Lie. Number 10 Downing Street is built on lies, bricks of lies, right? And when I get a calculator, which is the truth, right? Keir Starmer doesn't like it. You want the truth. You can't handle the truth. So we've got a problem, because the only voodoo which is happening now is the insidious, corrupt, evil, satanic, pure lies of these bureaucrats, politicians who haven't even followed the election rules. They've blagged their way to elections. They're blagging their way into government. They can't even tell the truth about the Human Rights Act, right to life. You cannot take life other than through criminal procedures. Fact, right? They can't even vote on that in Parliament. I have actually assessed every single MP's letters on truth and fact percentage. And I had the AI going through every MP one by one, reading all the letters they've issued to their clients, right? Are they honest or not? And for legal accuracy and for factuality, they were getting in the lower 90%, right? And for honesty, they were getting around 88%, some higher and some lower, but more closer to 88%, 83%, not that honest. And as soon as I told the AI to take into account that certain MPs had voted in favour of assisted dying when it can't possibly be done because they're going against the law and they lied, the honesty values dropped through the bottom of the floor, right? And that's only one bill that's going through Parliament. We haven't even got into the jury trials yet, which they can't possibly take away because it's dependent on the independence and impartiality of the jury, and only the jury are both independent and impartial. The judge takes the oath. Now the AI said, "Oh well, the oath it's just it's ceremonial, right? The oath's just ceremonial. This is what the lawyers and barristers are talking about at the moment. Oh well, it's been decided that it's kind of like just a bit of a ceremonial thing. Are you serious? You cannot be serious." How can Baroness Carr of this country, right, take an oath and say they're meaningless, there's no point in it, and then refuse to accept any legal representation from anyone in this country because they haven't taken the oath? They haven't taken an oath on an affidavit. What is the point in it? What do the words say on the oath? I swear to tell the truth. If oaths are ceremonial, you don't even need to tell the truth, which is the entire basis of the Keir Starmer government, bureaucrats and Labour Party. They don't have to tell the truth. Now, when I do a document and it gets checked by AI and I am graded with a PhD in accuracy, I am given a distinction. I have a distinction because that document is the highest standard that you can get in this country. I am the best, right? I am the best. It is the truth, right? So any barrister in this country who says it's a load of tosh is lying, and that's why they don't like it, because they don't want the truth in that courtroom. And this is the problem with Baron Hermer. We're not doing truth anymore in this government. We're doing what Keir Starmer wants to do, right? That's what we're doing, and that's why they're blocking our petitions and those ombudsman complaints and hiding behind an administrative digital firewall. We are being taken over by a digital bureaucratic revolution which is illegal in this country. And if that military does not stop them, and MI5, we are in serious trouble now, right? We're in trouble because this government is evil.